Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Maintenance is a very important part of gun ownership. You have to keep your guns cleaned and well lubricated if you want them to perform as well as they should perform. And you need them to be reliable if you ever have to use them. So we're kind of going back to basics today, but I remember when I bought my first pistol, I needed to figure out how to clean it. So for any of you that are just buying your first handguns, or if you just need a refresher course, today we're going to clean this. This is my PSA dagger build, the Gucci Glock on a budget, if you watched the build series. And we're just going to put the camera up close and go over it. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical and hit that bell notification. So when it comes to cleaning firearms, there are a few different schools of thought. There are the people that basically never clean their guns until they start getting malfunctions. And with some kinds of guns, you can get away with that to a kind of an extent. You know, Glocks, you can run them pretty dirty and with minimal lubrication. AR-15s, you can run dirty, but you need lubrication. AKs, they'll run dry if you need them to. But then there are also the people that clean their guns after every single range session, even if they just put a mag through them. I'm a little bit in the middle. I clean my guns fairly regularly once they've been used. My whole theory behind that, though, is just that if I clean it before it gets too dirty, then the job of cleaning it is easier because there's less fouling, less carbon buildup that I have to get rid of. And then I also know that my firearm is clean, lubed, good to go the next time I need to use it. So that's kind of my thing. We have put quite a few rounds through this one, but you'll see when we go up close in a second. It's not super dirty, but it's dirty enough that I feel like it's worth cleaning. Now before we get started, there are a few things that you basically need in order to clean your gun well. You can either go the CLP route. CLP stands for Clean, Lubricate, Protect, and it's basically just, one product does it all. I like to go the two-part way. I use an actual gun cleaner, and then I use oil when I'm done. And I use Hops number 9. I'm a little bit old school. I like the way it smells, and it seems to do a great job for me. So I found no reason to switch, although there are tons of great, cleaners and lubricants on the market for firearms. Just pick one that you like, and I'm sure it'll be good. Now, what you need, again, like I said, you're either going to need CLP or a cleaner and a lubricant. You're going to want one of these brushes. I like the ones with the plastic bristles. The metal bristles can scratch your finish and actually cause damage to some of your internal parts. So I don't really like to use those. I use the ones with the plastic bristles. A toothbrush will work just fine. You're also going to want just like a rag, cleaning patches, and I like to use bore snakes. Now you can, use a bore brush and a jag and, your patches and do all that way. But for just a regular cleaning, I like bore snakes. They're nice and easy. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. So let's go up close and get started. So cleaning a striker-fired handgun is very easy. It's of all the firearms that I own, this is the most simple kind to clean. So the first thing you're going to do, make sure that the gun is empty and that you don't really have any ammunition anywhere near your gun cleaning area. You want to make sure that there is no way you're going to have any ammunition in that firearm. Could cause a negligent discharge. So once you've unloaded the gun, break it down with a Glock style gun. You're going to pull the slide back a little bit, pull down on these tabs, pull the trigger, and your slide and barrel will come right off. You have your recoil spring and assembly. This one has a threaded barrel. If yours doesn't, you won't have to unthread your thread protector, but in order to get the barrel out on this gun, we do have to do that. And then your barrel will come right out of the slide like so. Now, I usually like to start on the frame and just get that out of the way. You can use a brush and really get down in there. I'm not going to this time because this gun isn't that dirty. We're just going to use some patches here. So grab a couple of these. These are not my favorite patches. They're not as thick as the ones I like, so I kind of double them up. Take a little bit of our hops number 9. Wet the patch with it. And then we're just going to get in here. And we're just going to clean everything. Get any fouling off of any of the internal components. The trigger area gets, a lot of fouling up in this kind of area right here. Your locking block there, I like to make sure that I get underneath the rails. But I basically just kind of go everywhere. Make sure that I've got everything nice and clean in here. Again, like I said, this gun isn't extremely dirty right now. So it's going to be pretty easy. And not really going to take a whole lot of work to get this clean. Get in your mag well a little bit if you can. And then get underneath these back rails. You can use this to get inside your rails really easily too if you need to. And then I just like to take a dry patch after I've run the solvent over everything. And just, kind of go over all those areas again with a dry patch. Make sure to get any solvent that remained on anything off. You'll see that you still get some fouling on there. There's always a little bit left behind. Once I've done all that, honestly, the frame is good. Now, if you do have a light, you might want to spend a little time on that. This light is not that dirty right now, but these can get some carbon on them, and that will affect your light output. So I always like to at least pay attention to it, see if it's something that needs to be done. But you see there, that's all it really took, and the frame is clean. With your recoil assembly, I usually just like to kind of wipe it off with a rag. It usually doesn't get that dirty. We just make sure it's good to go, and we'll set that aside. Now with the slide, a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll take this brush and I'll dip it in solvent and really go at it, especially on the breech face here, that area, into your rails and all that. My guns with optics, I don't like to do that as much, just because I don't want to get all up here on the actual lens on the optic. So we're just going to kind of do the same thing that we did with the frame. We're going to take a couple of patches here, moisten them with some solvent, and we're just going to kind of get in here on everything. Especially make sure you pay good attention to that breech face. You can see how much stuff is coming off of here. And really, I think I've only put, about 60 rounds through this since the last time I cleaned it. And you still get a pretty decent amount of carbon fouling in there. It's just the way it is. So when you get into the hundreds and hundreds of rounds, your gun will definitely need some cleaning. Now these guns are, designed to work pretty well, even if they're dirty. But again, like I said, I just like to know for sure that my gun is going to perform exactly as it should every time I pick it up if I need to use it. And so I like to keep them nice and clean. Again, just kind of getting in here on everything. Go over the outside a little bit if you need to. This gun wasn't really all that dirty. And then again, with a dry patch, go back over everything. I do like to pay attention to the window on my optic. This gun doesn't really do it too bad, but I do have one where it gets a lot of carbon actually on the optic window from the ejection port there. Clean off the outside of it. Get in here. Make sure everything is nice and dry. I don't really like to leave any solvent behind, but that solvent will evaporate off. So not really a huge deal that you do it perfectly when it comes to drying it off. I just like to make sure I'm all good. Q-tips really help in here too. Q-tips are great for getting inside these rails. You can get in there really, really well. And you can see all that black that comes off of there. If you've gone a little while between cleaning your gun, maybe dip the Q-tip in some solvent and then get in there. I just like to make sure that, any little nooks and crannies, just make sure everything is nice and clean. You don't really want to get any oil in your striker channel there, so be careful about that when we get to the oiling stage of things. But I think we're looking pretty decently clean here on the slide. We're going to set this aside. And now we're going to work on the barrel. So the barrel is one part where I will use this brush. Again, like I said, I usually use it on the slide as well, just not on the guns that have optics on them. So we're going to take the larger bottle of solvent here, because this one, the brush will actually fit in. Set this stuff aside for a second. Give it a little dip. And we're going to pay special attention to the bore right there. Get all in here. Just kind of brush it down with solvent. Pay attention to the threads here. Get in the ends of it. And then we're going to take our rag and just wipe this whole thing off. Make sure you're paying good attention to this area. That's where you do get a lot more fouling. And you do want your feed ramp to be nice and clean, because you don't want rounds catching on that when they're loading into the breech there. Now that is not perfect, but it is good enough. You don't have to be absolutely perfect on everything. Just want it clean, make sure it's going to run well. Get those threads, make sure those are nice and clean. And that looks pretty dang good. Now we're also going to take the thread protector here. I like to just go around the inside of it with Q-tips. Again, if I've put a lot of rounds through it, I'll use a little solvent on that. But this thing is not very dirty. So the last thing that we do with the barrel, this is where the bore snake comes in handy. It's just, in my opinion, the easiest way to clean a barrel. So I like these bore snakes that have like the brass on them. That'll get all the fouling out of there. So you just take it, put it through from the breech to the muzzle end. I like to pull this one through like twice. And then I've actually got another one that I use to finish cleaning the bore. And that are these. These Otis ones are awesome. So I take this and I'll actually take a little bit of this. This is CLP, specifically it's bore snake oil. Put a couple drops on here. And it's really all it takes. You don't want your bore to be like oily, but this will help clean and protect it. And I'll run this through the same way. I usually like to go about 5 times just to make sure that I get rid of that excess oil on there. And this just kind of puts the finishing touches on cleaning your bore out. Makes it nice and clean and just like it's brand new. So, our barrel is done. Now we're going to put our gun back together. But first, we're going to lubricate it. So when it comes to lubrication, striker-fired guns generally don't need much. That's why I like these little bottles with the fine applicator tip on them. So I'll take this and just run down these rails with it. Just put a little bead of oil in there. And then with our barrel, I'll actually put a little bit more on it. Just like to put a tiny bit here. And then down there. Use my finger to kind of get it around everywhere. You don't want it specifically like really wet, but you just want a nice thin layer of lubrication on everything. This will go back inside the gun, like so. Wipe the oil off of my hands here, and put my thread protector back on. Then our recoil assembly is going to go back in, stick it in the muzzle end, and click it in just like that. Now, our actual frame here, again, like a Glock style gun like this, very minimal amount of lubrication is needed. So I like to put a little bit on these rails. We're running out of oil in my little applicator bottle here. Put just a little bit on each of these. A little bit on these front rails. I like to put a little bit in here where your locking block rides on the barrel. And that is about it. That's all you really need. You just take this and like to run it back and forth a few times, move that oil around on everything, function check, and your gun's clean. And that, folks, is all it takes to clean your striker fired handgun. Now, to do something like a 1911, there is a slightly different process just when it comes to, breaking the thing down, putting it back together. But you're basically doing the same thing. Take it apart, clean the parts, oil them up, put it back together. And that's really the same thing with any firearm. And so once you really understand how to clean one of them, you just put that same knowledge and it works for just about anything. It's just going to be a little bit different looking parts. I did do a video about cleaning an AR-15 at the very beginning of this channel about a year ago. But the AR-15 that I used in it was already clean. And so I just kind of showed what to do and didn't get a whole lot of views. So I hope people like this one better. We actually cleaned the gun on camera. You saw how quick and easy it is. That's all it really takes to keep your gun running really well. Keep it reliable. I like to keep mine nice and clean and oiled. They just feel better. And you know that they're going to work every single time. This gun is ready to go. So if you guys enjoyed this, please leave me a like. Please share this video. Subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. Leave me a comment if this helped you at all, or if you have a completely different way of doing things. And let me know if you're one of those people that lets your gun go thousands of rounds between cleaning, or if you clean it after every range trip, or if you're somewhere in the middle. I would love to hear from you. And I answer every single comment. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.